Karen Sullivan stared across her pristine desk with the cold efficiency of a corporate executioner. Behind her, motivational posters about teamwork and excellence mocked the conversation we were about to have. "Michael," she said, her voice devoid of any human warmth, "after careful evaluation, we've determined that you're just not valuable enough to this company." The words hit me like a physical blow. 15 years of loyalty, 15 years of 60-hour weeks and missed family dinners, reduced to a single devastating assessment. "Your skill set doesn't align with our evolving needs," Karen continued with practiced corporate speak. "We're looking for people who can add more value to our dynamic workplace environment." I sat there stunned, watching this woman who'd never worked a day on the floor dismiss my entire career with bureaucratic buzzwords. Karen's smirk was barely concealed as she delivered the killing blow. "Not valuable enough?" I whispered, my voice steady despite the rage building inside. "We'll see about that." 10 years earlier, I remember the night I stayed until 3 a.m. fixing the server crash that would have cost Meridian Industries millions in lost productivity. Karen had gone home at 5 p.m. sharp, but I remained, crawling under desks and rewiring connections until everything worked perfectly. The thank you email never came. I remember covering for 3 people during the Great Resignation of 2021, single-handedly managing accounts worth $15 million while management bragged about cost savings to the board. The promotion never materialized. I remember training 17 different new hires, watching them leave for better opportunities while I remained loyal, believing dedication would eventually be rewarded. The recognition never arrived. 15 years of being the backbone of this department, the person everyone called when something broke, when deadlines loomed, when clients needed reassurance. I was the institutional memory, the problem solver, the bridge between management's impossible demands and reality. But they never saw it. To them, I was just overhead, a line item to be optimized away when quarterly profits needed boosting. I was the backbone, I thought bitterly, but they never saw it. The email arrived at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, sent to the entire department with clinical efficiency. Subject: Organizational restructuring, Michael Torres position. Team: Please be advised that Michael Torres's role will be phased out over the next 2 weeks as part of our ongoing optimization initiatives. Please direct any questions about transitional responsibilities to management. No mention of my 15 years of service. No acknowledgement of my contributions. Just a cold announcement that I was being discarded like outdated equipment. Walking down the hallway afterward was a gauntlet of awkward glances and whispered conversations. Coworkers I'd worked alongside for years suddenly found their shoes fascinating when I approached. Sarah from accounting gave me a sympathetic smile before hurrying away. Tom from sales actually crossed to the other side of the corridor. My boss, Derek, emerged from his office with barely contained glee. "Guess you'll be gone by Friday, Michael. Hope you've got your resume updated." His chuckle echoed down the hallway as he walked away. I stood there, surrounded by the machinery of corporate indifference, realizing that 15 years of loyalty meant absolutely nothing to these people. But Karen's assessment was about to prove spectacularly wrong. That night, sitting in my empty apartment with a bottle of beer and a wounded ego, I started going through old family documents, looking for anything that might help with unemployment claims or severance negotiations. That's when I found it, buried in a box of papers from my Uncle Roberto's estate. A legal document from Pinnacle Holdings, dated 3 years ago. Uncle Roberto had been a successful real estate investor, but I'd never paid much attention to his business dealings. After his death, the lawyer had mentioned some minor holdings that were part of my inheritance, but I'd been too grief-stricken to focus on details. Now, staring at the deed transfer document, I saw something that made my heart race. Property: 1247 Commerce Drive, Suite 200 to 800. Transferred to Michael Torres, 15% ownership interest. 1247 Commerce Drive. The address of Meridian Industries corporate headquarters. My hands trembled as I cross-referenced the document with my company's address. It was a match. I didn't just work for Meridian Industries. I partially owned the building they operated in. Karen Sullivan had just told a partial landlord that he wasn't valuable enough. The irony was absolutely delicious. At 11 p.m., I called the emergency line for Henderson and Associates, the law firm that had handled Uncle Roberto's estate. "This is Michael Torres. I need to speak with someone about my inheritance from Roberto Torres immediately." 20 minutes later, I was on a conference call with estate attorney Patricia Wells, who'd been waiting 3 years for me to take interest in my property holdings. "Michael, you own 15% of the commercial property through Pinnacle Holdings. Your uncle structured it specifically to give beneficiaries influence over tenant agreements." "What kind of influence?" "Lease renewals, modification approvals, tenant conduct violations. 15% isn't majority control, but in Pinnacle's corporate structure, it's enough to block or approve major decisions." My pulse quickened. "What about lease violations?" "If a tenant violates their agreement, minority shareholders can petition for review. Given your uncle's setup, you have significant leverage." I stared at Meridian's corporate directory on my computer screen. "Patricia, technically speaking, what would you call my relationship to Meridian Industries?" Her laugh was knowing. "Michael, technically speaking, you're their landlord." I hung up the phone and smiled for the first time in days. Karen Sullivan was about to learn about value in the most expensive way possible. Wednesday morning, I walked into Meridian Industries with a completely different perspective. Instead of seeing my workplace, I was surveying my property. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every corporate slight was now being cataloged by someone with the power to affect their future. "Morning, Michael," Karen said with fake cheerfulness, clearly enjoying her power over my final days. "Hope you're making progress on that transition documentation." "Absolutely," I replied with a calm smile. "Just taking notes on everything." Her smirk widened. She thought I was talking about work files. Actually, I was documenting every lease violation, every potential breach of tenant conduct, every reason Pinnacle Holdings might have to reconsider Meridian's occupancy agreement. Derek strutted past, making exaggerated packing box gestures to his cronies. "Better start cleaning out that desk, Michael. Friday's coming fast." "Thanks for the reminder," I said pleasantly. Throughout the day, I watched their behavior with the detached interest of someone who knew the balance of power had already shifted. They just didn't realize it yet. "Keep talking," I thought as Karen made another sarcastic comment. "You'll regret every word." My new perspective revealed violations I'd been blind to as a mere employee. Now, viewing Meridian through the lens of property ownership, I saw a company systematically violating their lease agreement. I started documenting everything: unpaid overtime that violated labor clauses in the building's commercial agreement, photographs of safety code violations in the electrical closets, screenshots of the toxic harassment Karen encouraged through her performance management meetings. The break room had a persistent mold problem management refused to address, violation of health and safety requirements. The server room exceeded safe temperature limits because Derek had disabled climate controls to save money, fire safety violation. Karen's meetings regularly involved discriminatory language that violated the building's professional conduct clauses. But the goldmine was discovering that Meridian had been subletting and used office space to a consulting firm without declaring the income, a direct breach of their lease agreement. Within 3 days, I'd assembled a folder thick enough to serve as grounds for lease termination. Every insult, every slight, every moment of corporate cruelty was now documented evidence that could destroy their tenancy. The camera panned over my growing stack of evidence. Karen had no idea she was being investigated by her own landlord. The viral video practically fell into my lap, courtesy of Jennifer, a junior associate who'd been secretly recording Karen's post-layoff celebrations. "I can't believe she said this stuff," Jennifer whispered, showing me her phone. "But I'm scared to do anything about it." The footage was damning. Karen and Derek in the conference room after announcing my termination, mocking not just me but every employee they'd laid off over the past year. "Dead weight," Karen laughed. "These people think loyalty means something. It's pathetic." "Best part is the savings," Derek added. "Michael alone is worth $60,000 in salary we don't have to pay." Their cruelty was captured in high definition, their contempt for employees laid bare for everyone to see. Jennifer, can you send me this video? What are you going to do with it? Justice, I replied simply. I created an anonymous LinkedIn account and posted the video with the caption, "This is how Meridian Industries management celebrates laying off loyal employees." Within 6 hours, the video had 50,000 views. By morning, it was trending in HR industry circles. Comments poured in from current and former Meridian employees, sharing their own stories of abuse. I smiled, watching the view counter climb. Social media was about to meet corporate accountability. Thursday brought the ultimate insult. Karen had scheduled my replacement's interview during my lunch break, clearly intending for me to witness my own obsolescence. "Michael, I'd like you to meet Jessica Chen," Karen announced with theatrical flourish. "She'll be taking over your responsibilities next week." Jessica was young, eager, and clearly uncomfortable with the staged cruelty of the moment. The conference room was packed with management, all watching to see how I'd handle this final humiliation. "Jessica, it's a pleasure to meet you," I said warmly, shaking her hand with genuine friendliness. She looked surprised by my professionalism. "Michael's been adequate in this role," Karen continued with poison-sweet condescension. "I'm sure you'll bring much more energy to the position." "I'm sure Jessica will do wonderfully," I replied, my voice steady and calm. What Karen didn't realize was that Jessica Chun was inheriting a position in a company whose lease agreement I could potentially terminate. As I shook Jessica's hand, I couldn't help but smile inwardly. Poor girl had no idea she might be starting her new job in a company that wouldn't have office space much longer. The irony was absolutely perfect. Friday morning brought my final subtle warning, a chance to give Karen one last opportunity to reconsider her treatment. "You know, Karen," I mentioned casually as she reviewed my transition documents, "funny thing about leases, they're not always permanent." She looked up with irritation. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, just thinking about how quickly situations can change in commercial real estate. One day you're secure, the next day you're looking for new office space." Karen frowned, clearly sensing some undercurrent she couldn't identify. "Michael, are you trying to threaten the company?" I laughed genuinely. "Threaten? No, just making an observation about business uncertainty. Buildings change hands, lease agreements get modified, tenant relationships evolve." "You're talking nonsense." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm talking about things most people don't understand until they experience them personally." Karen's frown deepened. "What's that supposed to mean?" I stood up, gathering my fake transition paperwork with a smile. "Just that value is often in the eye of the beholder, Karen. Sometimes the most valuable person in a building is the one nobody notices." I walked away, leaving her staring after me with growing unease. She had no idea what I meant, but she was about to find out. That weekend, I sat in my apartment with a calendar spread before me and a red marker in my hand. Thursday was circled in bold. Lease renegotiation review. According to Patricia Wells, Pinnacle Holdings conducted annual reviews of all tenant agreements during the third week of every month. Meridian's lease was up for standard renewal, but recent violations could trigger immediate renegotiation or termination. As a 15% owner, I had the right to petition for review of any tenant's conduct, and I had more than enough evidence to justify such a petition. I prepared 3 separate documents: formal complaint about lease violations, evidence package documenting safety, legal and conduct breaches, recommendation for immediate lease review. My signature on these documents would trigger a formal investigation into Meridian Industries' tenancy. Karen's words echoed in my memory, "You're just not valuable enough." I whispered to the empty apartment, "By Thursday, you'll understand my value." The countdown had begun. Karen had exactly 6 days to enjoy her victory over the worthless employee. Then she'd meet the landlord. Monday brought more evidence of Karen and Derek's complete disregard for professional conduct. During my lunch break, I overheard them in the conference room, laughing about their weekend plans funded by all the money we're saving on dead weight. Karen was using company credit cards for personal expenses. Derek was bragging about his new car, purchased with his cost-cutting bonus. They were celebrating their financial gains from destroying people's lives. I calmly took photographs of them using company laptops for personal business. Derek booking vacation flights, Karen online shopping during work hours. Every image was time-stamped evidence of lease violations and corporate misconduct. Dead weight, Karen laughed again. These people actually thought they mattered. I documented every word, every laugh, every moment of their cruelty. Wednesday was approaching, the day I'd submit my formal complaint to Pinnacle Holdings. By Thursday, their laughter would turn to panic. By Friday, they'd understand exactly how much the dead weight had been holding up. I smiled, taking one final photograph of Karen's personal shopping spree on company time. The evidence file was complete. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Tuesday brought an unexpected visit from CEO Jonathan Pierce, a rare appearance from the corporate executive who usually stayed in his downtown office. I was in the lobby reviewing lease violation documents when Pierce walked through the main entrance. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the reception desk. On impulse, I stood and extended my hand. "Mr. Pierce, I'm Michael Torres. Nice to meet you." He shook my hand with genuine warmth. "Michael, I didn't realize you worked here. How long have you been with Meridian?" 15 years, sir." Pierce's expression grew concerned. 15 years? That's impressive loyalty. I hope we're treating you well." Before I could answer, Karen appeared from the elevator, her face pale at seeing me talking to the CEO. "Mr. Pierce," she interrupted quickly, "I wasn't expecting you today." Pierce looked between Karen and me with growing interest. "Just wanted to check on the department restructuring I approved, making sure we're handling transitions properly." Karen's smile was strained. "Of course, everything's proceeding smoothly." Pierce turned back to me. "Michael, it was good meeting you. 15 years of service deserves recognition." As he walked away, Karen stared at me with suspicion and fear. "Didn't realize you worked here," I repeated Pierce's words quietly. Karen's panic was beginning. The CEO now knew my name, and tomorrow he'd know much more. Wednesday morning brought Karen's final act of corporate cruelty, a fake exit interview designed to maximize my humiliation. "Michael, let's discuss your departure," she announced, gesturing to the conference room like she was granting me an audience. The meeting was pure theater. Karen had invited Derek and 3 other managers to witness my final degradation. 15 years is a long time," she began with false sympathy. "But sometimes companies need to trim the fat." Derek snickered. "Nothing personal, Michael. Just business. We're streamlining for efficiency," another manager added, "keeping only the most valuable players." Karen leaned forward with predatory satisfaction. "The truth is, Michael, this company will function better without you. We're eliminating positions that don't add sufficient value." I sat quietly, letting them enjoy their moment of triumph. "Any final thoughts about your time here?" Karen asked mockingly. I looked around the table at these people who'd spent years undervaluing my contributions. "Just one," I said softly. "In any organization, the most important person is often the one who controls the foundation." Karen laughed dismissively. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled calmly. "It means I own the knife, Karen." Her laughter faltered slightly. She had no idea what I meant. But she'd understand tomorrow. Wednesday afternoon, I met privately with David Chun, the property manager for Pinnacle Holdings, in the building's management office. "Mr. Torres, I've reviewed your complaint and supporting documentation," David said, spreading my evidence across his desk. "This is quite comprehensive. I take property management seriously. Meridian Industries has violated their lease agreement in multiple categories: unauthorized subletting, safety code violations, misuse of facilities, and conduct unbecoming of professional tenants." David reviewed photographs of the safety violations, printouts of the unauthorized subletting, and documentation of management's misuse of company resources. Any one of these violations would justify lease review. Together, They constitute grounds for immediate termination. What are my options as a minority shareholder? You can petition for immediate lease review, demand compliance corrections, or recommend tenant termination. David paused. Or you can use this leverage to negotiate better tenant behavior. I considered the options carefully. What happens if I recommend lease review? Emergency board meeting within 48 hours. If violations are confirmed, tenant has 30 days to relocate. David looked at me seriously. If you say the word, Mr. Torres, they're out. I smiled, thinking about Karen's assessment of my value. Let me think about it overnight. Wednesday evening brought the final piece of intelligence I needed, delivered by Sarah from accounting, who approached me in the parking lot looking nervous and determined. Michael, I can't stay quiet anymore, she whispered, glancing around for eavesdroppers. What's wrong, Sarah? Karen and Derek are planning something awful. They're not just firing you Friday, they're going to make it public and humiliating. Security escort, box of personal items, the whole degrading show. My blood ran cold. A public perp walk was the ultimate corporate humiliation. They want other employees to see what happens when someone becomes dead weight, Sarah continued. Karen said it would send a message about expectations. I nodded calmly, my mind racing with the implications. Sarah, thank you for telling me. That took courage. It's not right, Michael. You don't deserve this. As she walked away, I stood in the parking lot considering my options. Karen wanted to make my departure a public spectacle of corporate power. Fine, I'd give her a spectacle, but she wouldn't like the ending. Perfect, I whispered to the empty parking lot. They'll walk out with me. The nuclear option was now the only option. Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m., an anonymous envelope was delivered to CEO Jonathan Pierce's office. The package contained everything. The viral video of Karen mocking laid-off employees, financial documentation of expense account fraud, safety violation photographs, evidence of unauthorized subletting, and witness statements from 6 employees detailing systematic harassment. But the centerpiece was a formal complaint from Pinnacle Holdings minority shareholder Michael Torres, requesting immediate lease review for tenant violations. Pierce's assistant called me at 8:15 a.m. Mr. Torres, the CEO would like to see you immediately. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Pierce as he reviewed the evidence with growing horror. This video, Karen actually said these things? On company time, in company facilities, using company resources to mock employees she'd terminated. Pierce's face darkened with each document he reviewed. The subletting violations alone could cost us millions in penalties, he muttered. He reached for his phone. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. Pierce slammed his fist on his desk. Board meeting. Tomorrow. The nuclear option was armed and ready. Karen's mockery was about to meet corporate accountability. The most explosive evidence was yet to be revealed. Thursday at noon, I requested a private meeting with CEO Pierce to deliver the information that would change everything. Mr. Pierce, there's something else you need to know about the lease violations. More violations? Not more violations. More authority to address them. I slid the property deed across his desk. I'm a minority owner of this building through Pinnacle Holdings. Pierce stared at the document like it was written in hieroglyphics. You own part of this building? 15%, inherited from my uncle Roberto Torres 3 years ago. I've been a part owner of Meridian's headquarters throughout my entire employment. The implications sank in slowly, then all at once. You're telling me that we've been planning to fire our landlord? Partial landlord. But yes. Pierce's face went through several shades of pale. And the lease violations you documented are being filed by a property owner who has legal standing to demand tenant compliance or recommend lease termination. He leaned back in his chair, staring at me with a mixture of awe and terror. Michael, what do you want? Pierce's eyes widened as he realized the company's most worthless employee was actually one of their most powerful stakeholders. The balance of power had completely shifted. Friday morning brought the showdown Karen had been anticipating. my public humiliation and termination, designed to send a message to the entire company about the consequences of being deemed worthless. Karen and Derek swaggered into the office like conquerors, having spent Thursday evening planning my corporate execution. "Ready for the big day, Michael?" Derek asked with cruel satisfaction. "More ready than you know," I replied calmly, carrying a folder of documents. At 9:45 a.m., Karen called me to the conference room where security waited with an empty cardboard box, the traditional props for a humiliating termination. "Michael, your employment with Meridian Industries is terminated effective immediately," Karen announced with theatrical authority. But before she could continue her prepared speech, the receptionist's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ms. Sullivan, Mr. Mitchell, and Mr. Torres, the board of directors will see you now. Main conference room. Immediately." Karen's triumphant expression flickered with confusion. "The board? Why would they want to see us?" I stood up, gathering my evidence folder with complete calm. "I imagine they want to discuss your performance as HR director, Karen." Derek's swagger faltered. "What's going on, Michael?" I smiled. "Justice." The main conference room was packed with corporate power. CEO Jonathan Pierce, the full board of directors, outside legal counsel, and representatives from Pinnacle Holdings. Karen and Derek entered first, their confidence evaporating as they saw the assembled authority. I walked in behind them, my evidence folder in hand, completely calm. "Gentlemen," CEO Pierce began, "we're here to address serious allegations of misconduct, lease violations, and potential criminal activity involving Meridian's HR department." Karen shot to her feet. "Sir, I don't understand." "Sit down, Ms. Sullivan," Board Chairman Morrison commanded. I was invited to present my evidence first. The viral video, financial fraud documentation, safety violations, unauthorized subletting, and systematic harassment. Each piece of evidence hit like a hammer blow. Derek's face went white as his expense account fraud was exposed. Karen's breathing became shallow as her employee harassment was documented. But when I reached the final document, my property ownership papers, the room fell completely silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said calmly, "I'm also here as a representative of Pinnacle Holdings, the company that owns this building." Board members leaned forward, stunned. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. The hunter had become the hunted, and the prey was holding the smoking gun. Karen's composure shattered completely as the implications of my revelation sank in. "This is ridiculous," she screamed, banging the conference table. "He's lying. He's making this up because I fired him." Security stepped closer as her voice rose to hysteria. "You can't believe this. He's a disgruntled employee trying to destroy me with fabricated evidence." Chairman Morrison's voice was ice cold. "Ms. Sullivan, are you suggesting that property ownership documents are fabricated?" This is impossible." Karen turned to me with desperate rage. "You're nobody. You're worthless. I fired you." "Actually," CEO Pierce interrupted, "Mr. Torres is a property owner with legal standing to evaluate our lease compliance. His employment status is irrelevant to his authority as a stakeholder." Derek tried damage control. "Sir, surely we can work out any misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" I pulled out the video evidence. "Is this a misunderstanding?" The room watched Karen and Derek mock terminated employees, their cruelty captured in high definition. Karen's voice cracked with panic. You can't." I looked at this woman who'd spent years calling me worthless. "Can't what, Karen?" "Exercise the same authority you've been using to destroy careers." The board members' expressions were stone cold. Karen's empire was crumbling in real time. "The lease agreement is quite clear," outside counsel explained, reviewing Meridian's tenant contract. "Conduct violations by management personnel constitute grounds for immediate lease review." I opened the lease document to the relevant section. Clause 15 specifically prohibits harassment, discrimination, and misuse of facilities by tenant representatives. Karen's face went ashen as she realized the scope of her legal exposure. The unauthorized subletting alone violates 3 separate clauses, I continued. But combined with documented harassment and financial misconduct, Meridian Industries is in material breach of their lease agreement. CEO Pierce leaned forward intently. What does that mean for the company? It means Pinnacle Holdings has grounds to terminate Meridian's lease immediately, requiring relocation within 30 days. The financial implications hit the board like a physical blow. Relocation costs, lease-breaking penalties, business disruption, millions of dollars in potential losses. All because Karen Sullivan thought I wasn't valuable enough. However, I continued, as a minority shareholder, I'm more interested in correcting tenant behavior than destroying the company. Relief flickered across Pierce's face. What would you require? I looked directly at Karen, who was staring at me with undisguised terror. Immediate termination of all personnel responsible for lease violations. Karen went completely pale. You wouldn't. I smiled calmly. Try me. Karen Sullivan and Derek Mitchell, Chairman Morrison announced with judicial finality. You are both terminated immediately for cause. Violation of company policy, breach of fiduciary duty, harassment, financial misconduct, and creating legal liability that threatens the company's operational continuity. Security moved to escort them out as Karen broke down completely. This isn't fair, she sobbed. I was just doing my job. Your job was to manage human resources professionally, CEO Pierce replied coldly. Instead, you created a hostile work environment that violated our lease agreement and exposed us to millions in potential penalties. Derek tried one last desperate play. Sir, surely we can negotiate some arrangement. The only arrangement you need to worry about is with your criminal defense attorney. Outside counsel interrupted. The expense account fraud alone constitutes embezzlement. As security prepared to escort them out, Karen turned to me with a mixture of hatred and desperation. Please, she whispered, her authority completely gone. Please don't let them do this to me. I looked at this woman who'd built her career on destroying others. Karen, you told me I wasn't valuable enough. Now you get to find out what happens when valuable people decide to exercise their value. Security escorted her out while she continued sobbing. The Queen was dead. Long live the King. The silence after Karen and Derek's removal was profound, like the moment after a storm passes and the air feels clean again. CEO Pierce was the first to speak, extending his hand with genuine respect. Michael, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you gratitude for saving this company from criminal liability and potential bankruptcy. You prevented a disaster that could have destroyed us, Chairman Morrison added. Your integrity and courage demonstrate exactly the kind of leadership Meridian needs. Which brings me to our next point, Pierce continued. We'd like to offer you Karen's position as HR director, with full authority to rebuild the department properly. The irony was perfect, the worthless employee being offered his tormentor's job. We're also prepared to offer you a significant salary increase, stock options, and a formal apology for the treatment you've endured. Around the table, board members nodded approvingly. What do you want, Michael? Pierce asked. How can we make this right? I looked around the conference room, the same room where Karen had planned my humiliation. Now I held all the power. The woman who'd called me worthless was unemployed and facing criminal charges. The company that had planned to discard me was begging for my leadership. I smiled, savoring the complete reversal of fortune. Let me think about your offer. 6 months later, I stood in my corner office, Karen's former office, reviewing the quarterly reports that showed Meridian's best employee satisfaction ratings in company history. Harassment complaints, down 89%. Employee retention, up 67%. Productivity, at all-time highs. Turns out that treating people with dignity and respect makes them more effective. Who could have predicted that? Karen Sullivan was serving 18 months for embezzlement and creating a hostile work environment. Her conviction had been featured in HR industry publications as a cautionary tale about toxic leadership. Derek had plea bargained down to probation and restitution, but his career in corporate management was permanently over. Jessica Chen, the young woman hired to replace me, had actually flourished in the new environment and been promoted to senior analyst. I transformed HR from a department of cruelty into a center of employee advocacy. The building's lease had been renewed for 10 years with favorable terms. And every day, I remembered Karen's words that started this whole journey. They said I wasn't valuable enough to this company, I said to my empty office, looking out at the building I partially owned. But without me, they didn't even have a place to sit. I smiled, thinking about the lesson learned the hard way. Never underestimate the quiet worker. Sometimes, we own the ground you're standing on. Value, I discovered, comes in many forms. And sometimes the most valuable person is the one nobody notices, until they decide to be noticed.